Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. This is James from eDirectory. Welcome to our webinar today. Okay, let's talk about data acquisition and building the database. And then next, we'll speak a little bit about monetization. If anybody has a question or a comment, please drop it into the Q&A module of Zoom here, and we'll stop periodically to answer questions, and especially at the end of the presentation. Okay, well, great. So the first thing I wanted to mention is that data is the key asset you're building here. eDirectory is a great platform for organizing and displaying structured data for your visitors. And so building this database over time, it ends up being the core asset of your directory typically. So it's worth putting the time and thought into how you're going to do it, strategically, et cetera. And one thing to keep in mind actually is that data these days is almost a commodity if it's sort of normal data. It's all over the internet, local listings, et cetera. So the thing that's really important is the quality of your data. Putting that extra time into having really great listings with photos, descriptions, et cetera, is extraordinarily important. And that's often what differentiates you from the other websites out there. Beyond this, one thing I wanted to mention is that it's often important, to have just, even if you have fewer listings, the quality really is key. Let's see, we had a question come up here, so let me just stop for a second and I will answer this. Give me 1 second. In order to build data, I need to upload some made up data. How can I use my own email address since I don't have a real email address for the made up data? I don't recommend doing that. I recommend you building real data. Made up data isn't really going to help anybody. It's not going to help your SEO or anything else. And so we'll talk a little bit now about how to make real data. Okay. So let me get back to the screen share here. Give me 1 second. Okay. And so the quality of the data is really key. Data is everywhere. Why does somebody prefer yours? So the quality comes down to 4 different things. The breadth is all of the listings available. Do you have coverage for every possible listing out there for your segment? And then the depth, the quality of listing, the depth of the information. Do you have all the data about individual specific listings, all the fields? How long have they been in business? Who are the founders? What's the market capitalization if it's a larger company? What products do they sell, et cetera, for that. And also, is the data error-free, which usually means, is it up to date? In the US, businesses move on average every 5 to 7 years. So if you think about that, every 5 years, that would be 20% of the data goes stale every single year. So it's really important to make sure that your data is sort of error-free. And then the last thing in quality is having something that nobody else has. And that often means some work, to be honest with you. Is the data hard to find or tedious to put together? One other thing that's extraordinarily important for most of these directory sites is the curation. Is it well curated? And that often actually means saying no to some of the data, not having everything, but just having the good stuff. You probably do want to have everything for your category, but not doing too many categories. And then highlighting listings that are going to be of use, of interest to your audience as well. And that curation is often the angle people take. Like they build directories either based on very niche providers for certain segments, or things like luxury directories or family-friendly angle on directories, stuff like that. So the curation is really important as well. And if you're able to get all the quality together, then you really have something that's very important. So your data strategy, the first thing is to set some goals. I think this is extraordinarily important. Just deciding, first estimating how many listings are out there, how many are available totally, in the world or the segment that you're going after, and then decide what you're able to actually do before launch. So you don't want to try to do everything all at once. You may decide to go after certain segments or certain geographic locations, and then set a goal on that. Estimate how many are available in that area, and then go after that. Set your goal accordingly. And then do the initial build out, and then you have the ongoing maintenance. So the depth goal is what fields do you want to have? There's a whole bunch of different fields about any subject, as you can imagine. So think about what fields you actually want to have. And then the breadth is which categories you want to go off after, and then which geographic areas. Those are typically the two angles that people take on as far as breadth. And what we always recommend is that you focus on goals that you're actually able to achieve. And after you've really nailed those goals, then set some new goals and move on from there. And the example I always give people is Craigslist, which was a really interesting internet case because they were able to really just build a huge business. It's over $500 million a year. And it's a global business at this point. And the way that they were able to do that is by building their data very smartly, because they had a tiny staff. They never really put a whole lot of money into the business. They got there early, but what they did was they started in San Francisco with a couple very specific categories. And then they went to New York, and then went to a couple other markets after that, and then expanded market by market, instead of trying to do everything all at once and going everywhere, all over the place. And set a timeline with your goal as well. That's the other thing, just in terms of startup execution or new project execution. If you're an existing business, the timeline is really, really important. So the initial build doesn't happen by itself. People aren't just going to come and sign up for the listings all alone. They will do a little bit of that as your directory gets more full, but you really need to seed it yourself and really just not let it try to happen on its own. Just take care of it. And then think about the SEO when you're doing that. Car versus automobile. Car has more searches potentially than automobile, etc. Sometimes you do want to go after the less searched keyword just because it's less competitive, but be strategic about it. You can acquire and build lists, improve the lists, and then do a process to claim the listing and update. So the list acquisition, you can manually search and build it. This is a great way to do it. It takes some time. You can do that yourself when you're getting started, or hire a team. You can outsource it, etc. That's just Google searching to build the list and putting it together in a spreadsheet and importing it into the directory. We have an import tool there. You can also use a scraping tool. Be careful about copyright laws around that. Where I'm not a lawyer, but typically the public information, at least in the US, I think is not copyrightable. That's some name, address, phone number, that kind of stuff. Descriptions and photos typically are, but at least you can get started on that. And then you can also make partnerships with other organizations, chambers of commerce, trade organizations, industry groups, et cetera, and they often have data lists for you that can help with that. You can also buy a list from a list broker. There's a whole bunch of them. InfoUSA, great quality. Axiom, Dun & Bradstreet is another one. Hoover's, Citygrid, and then there's just a bunch of them. Yelp has data that I think they're able to do. And then there's a bunch of low quality vendors. I don't recommend this at all, actually, but I need to put it up here because some people do go this route, and it's just they get the cheapest cheapest data they can possibly get, and that's sort of an oddity software or the data supplier, that kind of thing out there. But after you get the list, then you want to improve it, and you can do that manually. You should do every category, at least a few really nice listings of photos and stuff. So the site looks good. And then you can outsource it to do it in scale. Freelancer, that's probably a great way for smaller businesses or smaller projects to do it. There are large companies that will do this outsourcing as well. The one thing actually that I recommend often is doing it as part of your sales process. So your salespeople will take the initial list and then contact the businesses, get them to claim their listings, or actually write the descriptions as they talk to the business, do a little interview there on the phone, and then they make it part of their sales process. And even if they don't close the deal, at least your director has more pages and it'll pick up more traffic and that sort of thing. And then there's many companies out there for data cleaning. You can just Google them all over the place. You can try them. I don't necessarily have a great recommendation for an individual company. What we found works better is sort of the artisanal approach where the person running the project does it himself or herself. Or hiring, student freelancer type of people to do it. That works pretty well. And you can pay them per listing, and you can organize them, hire them off Craigslist or other sites online. They don't need to be local. They can work from home, pay them per listing, that kind of thing as they do it, or have the salespeople do it. There's an interesting product, Amazon Mechanical Turk, which will do data cleanup as well. You can check it out. It's a little bit complicated to understand how it all works, but essentially you can upload a spreadsheet or a database, and they will have individual people go through and clean it up item by item. You can set the tasks for them to do. Now we'll talk a little bit about the monetization phase. Let me see here. I think we had a question come in, so I'll stop the share for 1 second and check the question. Do you recommend a certain cap on categories and also subcategories? Yeah, that's actually a really great question. So this is kind of very interesting. So the directory business, years ago, it used to be all print books, yellow page print books. And the way that people go through a yellow page print book is very different than they browse on the web. And so if you think about it, an index in a yellow page, it's basically like, I want to find an Indian restaurant. So I go through and I go to restaurants, and then I go down and search some more. And so the thing is with the yellow pages, that whole indexing process, it's a little bit tedious for a person because they have to go, and then if it's multiple jumps or multiple drill downs, it gets a little bit complicated. Whereas with the web, it's much quicker to click and go through more depth. So typically what's happened there is the old print industry had very shallow category lists where there were, maybe 1 or 2 or maybe 3 levels, but they were very shallow and there were a whole bunch of them. And now with online directories, I think the general recommendation is that, you start with top categories that'll fit sort of above the fold on the homepage, and just sort of figure out what that number is. And it may be something, I don't know, 30 at the most, something like that. And then you can go into more depth for the subcategories. We really do recommend that you get more depth to it though. You don't want to go insane with it. But the thing is, each of those subcategory pages will pick up extra traffic from the keywords. And it's actually the really good traffic because, there's 2 types of traffic, like somebody looking for an individual business and they know the business name, et cetera, and then they go to that. But somebody looking for a category is actually somebody trying to make a purchase decision. And so that one is potentially much more valuable. And so if you put more depth and more quality into those categories and make them very much more descriptive, often that goes a long way for the SEO. For that. So in terms of specific numbers, I can't really say, do this many, just because some of these directories are very broad and have millions of listings, and some of them are, guides for very specific industries or local areas that have very few categories. And so it's all over the map. But I would think about the two aspects I would think about is user interface design, like what fits above the fold. And so people don't have to do too much scrolling, because typically they don't scroll down. And then the second is the SEO aspect of it. That's what I'd recommend there. Okay, so let me get to the monetization part now. And I hope that answered that okay. So monetization, the first part of monetization is the pricing and how to set the pricing. Actual pricing depends on the market. It really depends. It's all over the place. Industrial directories often have very high pricing, whereas local guides, if you're doing a guide for a barber shop or something, it's not going to be that much. It's often, you can check the average ticket that somebody would pay. So some categories may pay more than others. Examples like a bakery where you go in and buy a coffee and a bagel for $10 versus a hotel where you might spend 150 or more per purchase. And so you can charge more per category, that type of thing. But it really is all over the market, and you need to understand if somebody uses the directory to make that purchase decision, what is that worth to the business? And then how many of those sales can you help them make? And then you can kind of go from there for setting some idea of what your pricing is worth. The other thing is just in terms of levels, we typically recommend 3 levels. A free level that just gets everybody involved. These are your imported listings, either claimed or unclaimed, that haven't necessarily paid yet. And this is good for SEO and engagement on the directory, et cetera. You can always upsell them later. And then the affordable, which is kind of your where you'll make most of your money. And then the aspirational for the market leaders. Those are kind of the 3 levels that we recommend. And the aspirational can be a very high ticket that you can negotiate down. Special packages are great, et cetera. One good way to set the actual pricing is to look at Google AdWords. They have price per click and how many clicks they're going to get, and then you can go out and make your sales pitch accordingly, such as Google. If Google brings you 50 clicks at $2 a click, that's worth $100 a month. We're going to bring you 50 clicks at $1 a month, $50 a month or whatever. So you can just kind of do that kind of math, and it makes pretty good, it resonates with as you're making your sales pitch. Monthly versus annual pricing. One thing to keep in mind is that your directory must produce ROI for an advertiser to renew, return on investment, or you'll have a very high churn rate. And so keeping that in mind, we recommend, it's often easier a little bit to get an annual directory going, because then you have a longer runway, because your directory picks up traffic over time. You get a listing signed up, but other listings sign up, and you have more content and more data, and then the traffic picks up, and everybody will start to get more leads. And as the tide rises, all boats rise there. So giving yourself more runway works pretty well for that. And you can always change this. That's one other thing. People often say, oh, my pricing is my pricing, but you can change it. You can just grandfather in the older customers and let the new, change the pricing for the newer customers, test different things, see what kind of resonates with people. It's a little bit harder to sell an annual, but it's not that much harder to sell it. So that's often the recommendation there. One other key piece of advice on monetization is don't just sell listings. Think of what else you can sell, bundle in other services. This is often very key advice. There's a whole bunch of, you can think of what you're personally or what your organization is equipped to sell. People often bundle a listing with tickets to an event. They sell a listing with a sponsorship of an event, a listing with website, email hosting, that kind of thing. We actually have a product, Page One Sites, that we're working on. It's sort of in a late launch beta now, but you can sell websites and email hosting. You can also sell websites and email hosting with other things. Go out and resell Wix sites or et cetera, et cetera. A really great one actually is video creation service, and we are going to do that. I think we're going to have a video coming up on some of these bundling ideas actually pretty soon. The ad management, SEO service, content writing, et cetera, all other ideas, but really think of what else you can sell, bundle it in with the listing. When you're first getting started, something tangible works really well with the listing. That's why video creation works great for a lot of our customers, where they go out and they just film a video at the business's site, interview them. It's not that hard to produce these days. You can get a fairly inexpensive camera and go out and a little edit it, and then you can give them the video to put on their own website, their own social media, as well as the directory, et cetera. One other thing, so when you're actually getting going, just the logistics of how do you go out and do this, typically what people do is they run sort of a sales email type program, and you import the data, and then you start emailing people a series of emails over a period. Often you email them and call them if you have telemarketing. Or if you're in some other market, some markets don't really use email that much, but they do use text message or some other things like that. And there are plenty of tools out there where you can do text messaging, WhatsApp messaging, all those type of things. And then basically you invite people to join your program, and then they join, and then you upsell them over time. That join, there's a bunch of different sort of techniques you can use to ask them to join. Just, hey, we want to feature you. Hey, check your business data and just make sure it's all verified. Also, as users get reviews or comments, hey, check to make sure you're all set up here, those kind of things. And then you offer upsells to paid listings as you go through that process. And that's generally the process to monetize the directory. And so, yeah, that's kind of my core presentation today, but I wanted to open it up and see if anybody has any comments, any questions. You can post them into the QA or into the chat. Emerson, do you have anything you'd like to add? Emerson's our marketing manager here. He might have a couple comments as well.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'd like just to add a few things, James, that people can also build lists using the lead form widget on their home pages, or create a new page to host these widgets. So they can tailor the form to have better and more focused questions. So they can build lists of people interested in offers, in deals, in certain type of categories. So you can create a newsletter for these people, sell sponsored newsletters. This kind of strategy works very well to many of our customers.
Yeah, so there's a widget in the site manager, basically, that you can create a lead form, and you just put that on the homepage or somewhere else on the website, and that'll collect as traffic comes in. People fill out the information there, and that helps as well. It looks like we had a couple questions come in. Let me go ahead and answer them. Recurring payment settings, let's say with PayPal, is eDirectory able to manage this? Yes, eDirectory has ability to manage recurring payments. Our preferred payment gateway actually is Stripe. We do support PayPal as well. You can check that out in the demo, or actually probably if you want to contact an account manager, they can show you that feature and how all that works there. So yes, we do support recurring payments. A question, can you explain the article section and how that would work as far as charging for those listings? Yeah, so the article section, we originally put that up a number of years ago just because we had some customers that were doing sort of content marketing directories, which is kind of interesting. And essentially it was white papers, those type of things. And somebody would want to post or feature a white paper or some other type of content in there for the article section. It's not probably the normal use case, and actually probably most people today wouldn't use the article pay that kind of thing for an article listing. But there are some eDirectories used for all sorts of different business models, and so that's probably why is that, you know, why that's in there. Today we have, you know, the system today, you're able to configure the listings with the listing template editor, and there's all sorts of widgets. And so you can really create robust listings that do all sorts of things. And so it may be that you don't really need that for. Another question here for generating revenue. Is there any future plan for a new add-on selling a subdomain through the directory? Yeah, there's actually a lot of our customers, or a number of our customers, they do almost like running franchising sort of directories, and basically they set them up and then have somebody else manage them, and they kind of handle the license and run it, and you know, and the setup, and then they turn it over to somebody else to run it, and then they charge them some ongoing fee or some upfront fee, almost like a franchise. Like, hey, you're running McDonald's in one city, and you know, somebody else is going to run the McDonald's, have a franchise in another city. It's sometimes done on a subdomain, but often it's done through a whole nother separate domain. But basically, the idea is the same there, where you would set up multiple directories, and we have an add-on site feature to do that. And so you kind of buy an add-on site, and then you can resell it to somebody. Is there any limit for articles for a listing? No, there's no real limit to any of the listing stuff. We have people running large directories. Really, there's, you know, a disk space and a bandwidth, you know, server potential, but at some point, but it's a lot of data, so I don't know that that really is a concern sort of getting off the ground. I heard eDirectory only allows 20 classifieds for a listing. Is that correct? Where's the logic for this? Can we change it? I think that may be the classifieds related to a listing or something along those lines. I actually don't know that data, that answer offhand. It can certainly be customized if it needs to. But do you really need to customize it? I would often think carefully before you customize things. Can I use classifieds twice? One is called jobs. What you can do is, I don't know you can use classifieds twice. You could maybe change the classifieds to jobs and then set up the main listings with another listing template. Emerson may answer in here with some more details on some for that answer. But yeah, typically the modules, there's only one module. We're actually working in future versions. We're gonna make how all that works really streamlined, so that you can create sort of multiple types of all sorts of things very easily. We had a question come in on the chat. We need our own system for viewing the IP address of visitors so that we can block spammers. Yeah, there's a bunch of ways to do that. That could probably be done. I think it's a fairly simple customization because every visitor obviously has an IP address, and so you know, we could somehow display that. But that can also be done through some other means, potentially at the firewall level. So blocking visitors is potentially a little bit more of a something to talk to an account manager about. So I think we'll put you in touch with somebody to discuss how that should actually be done. We could either maybe customize the system so you could do it in the site manager, or you could just set up something sort of at the firewall level, et cetera, to really block people out there. A bunch of ways to do that. All right, I think that's it. I don't know if we have any more questions come in. Emerson, any last comments here for today? Anything else?
There's a new question on.
Oh yeah, one more come in. Okay, great. We'll take them. We'll take all of them. All right. My director will serve the pharmaceutical industry. Great industry. Those high value industries where there's a lot of where there's a lot of money flowing around, are typically very good industries that have, niche industries. It'll be for suppliers, their product listings. What can you suggest to me for the list of products? I was thinking classifieds field with pricing, but maximum 20 allowance made me concerned. So one thing you can do with the pharmaceutical industry, like pharmaceutical companies, they're not launching new products like clothing companies, they typically have a list of them, and even if it's a bigger list. But what you can actually do with that is have the main listing for the pharmaceutical company, and then have all the products actually be a part of the body of the listing. And so you can put in widgets that kind of do some of those things depending on that. That's kind of complicated depending on how you want to set that up. So I'd recommend talking to somebody about that, and Emerson can put you in touch with an account manager that can really go in there specifically. Classified product listing, what classifieds? Other classifieds by this supplier widget. Is this available for the supplier? I'm not sure, but that question, I didn't really understand it, but I think what you want to do is take the listing detail page and edit the widgets there to put the products or the things that you need in there. Emerson will answer that as well.
I believe that with the related listings or the linked listings widget, he can do that.
Okay, that's actually the right answer there. So now I understand. So there's a pharmaceutical company, and you create there's a listing type in eDirectory, and so you would create one for pharma companies or chemical companies, and then the other one for products that they sell, which are the actual chemical products. And so you have these two different listing types, and then you can relate them. So they're all under the same account, and then in the main chemical company you would have the product listings. And that way, when somebody's searching, they'll see both the chemicals and all of that. I think it'd be a great idea for you to schedule just sort of a private demo with us to sort of go through the details on how all that should be set up. But that's basically it. Emerson's exactly right. It would be a product listing and then company listing, both as listing types, not using classifieds necessarily. I would keep the classifieds out, maybe leave that for jobs, and then put all the product stuff and all that as listing types. Okay, I think we got those two. Are there any plans to make articles geo-based, like classifieds, listings, and events? Interesting question. I'm not sure why you would want to do that. Maybe if you're doing articles in different places in the world or articles for different markets. But maybe the way to do that, maybe the way to do that is with categories. I don't know. You could set categories of articles for different markets. It really depends on how you want to set that up and how you want it to look. There's a whole bunch of ways. Like eDirectory is really great with the structured data, and so just sort of organizing it through the widgets and all of that. So I don't think there are any plans to make geo-based articles, but what we are doing is making the listing module much more flexible in future versions, to the point where you can use the actual listing, create an article listing, and then it has all the fields that an article potentially would, as well as the geo fields if you wanted it. Because a lot of people don't want articles obviously to be geo-based. Probably most people don't, but some people do, and so that'll give you some flexibility. So in the future, the listing templates, listing types will have more flexibility there. Okay. Let's see. Okay, we got that done. Will this webinar be published on YouTube? Yes, absolutely. Emerson will post it on YouTube for you to watch later. So absolutely. Okay, well, great. Let's see if we have any more questions here. Question about customization. If I pay your company for customization, what happens after the next upgrade? Yeah, so that's something certainly to think about. Customization, depending on what you're doing, some customizations are difficult and difficult to sort of move over after the upgrade. Typically what we do is if you have a customized version and you request an upgrade, we see what's involved on moving the customization over, and then there is some cost to do that, some labor cost. It's often not as much as the original customization. It really depends on if it was a major upgrade and if the upgrade had changes to the core parts. Like say you change the checkout process for a listing, you modified that, and then our next version may have some changes to that, and then those conflict, and so then there's some cost to that. So typically, for upgrades, we take them on a case-by-case basis, and we let you know what the cost is. The other thing I just tell everybody is, and I know we're selling upgrade services, but think carefully if you really need these customizations. I've seen a lot of people over the years, not just with eDirectory, with everything on the web, they get sucked into this little detail of the customization when really the business is a media business. And so do you really need to do that customization? If you do need to do it, get it done. And yeah, there is some ongoing cost to move it over to upgrades and all of that. But often the stuff may not be that essential and you're able to get away with not doing it. And so I'd avoid it if you don't need to do it. Let's see. And okay, I think that's about it. Yeah, I guess that's it for today then. Emerson, if you don't have anything else, I want to thank everybody. We have another demo coming up in 2 weeks. And if anybody has any suggestions of other things that you would like to see, during these webinars, if you want us to drill down on a specific topic or something along those lines, please let us know. You can send us an email. Maybe Emerson can type in the email into the chat there for us. But send us an email if you want to hear about any specific aspects of running a directory, business side or anything related to the setup. We love hearing ideas for new webinars upcoming, and we intend to run one of these every couple weeks. Okay. Thanks a lot. I'm James, and this is Emerson. You can send Emerson an email. My email is james.chubb@eDirectory as well. You can send me an email as well. So thanks again, everybody, and have a great day. Okay. Thanks.